It's the 25th of November, 2021. I hope everybody's doing good on this Thanksgiving today for America. And so this is the last video of the week. It'll be here for people that are out celebrating or whatever, visiting family. So resulting destruction will take half the planet with it. They're talking about a single nuclear power plant in Japan. And they didn't abandon the grocery store or something to do. So you're not going to see a headline like that if there's a coal plant breaks down. Yeah, resulting destruction will take half the planet with it. What are you talking about? Oh, the coal plant broke down. I never heard that. Or the oil plant broke down. We're going to take half the planet with it. Or the gas plant broke down. Or the carbon is... but nuclear, resulting destruction will take half the planet with it, is being conservative. France says Japan has lost control and the French should leave the country. So if your oil, coal, gas plants break down, does the country now has lost control and everybody, all the foreigners should leave the country? Because first off, coal, oil and gas, the emissions are not going to go very far. And they're not lethal unless you live next door to them. Swiss embassy evacuates Tokyo fearing radiation. Which is 220 plus kilometers away. They banned food from 14 prefectures. All the northern prefectures, you know. There's another way of saying that is half of Japan. In 55 countries worldwide. Can 55 countries worldwide be wrong? Well, they just lift all of those restrictions without even being reported in American, Canadian medias or European medias. Officials unsure what to do next. Korea calls Japan's handling of the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns incompetent. This is pretty... Well, it's the nuclear industry, it's not Japan. It's the nuclear industry is incompetent. EU Energy Commissioner calls Fukushima an apocalypse. That everything is out of control. Tokyo's lost almost all control of the events at the nuclear meltdowns, energy officials. And they've never actually, the IAEA never actually went there. They claimed they went there, but we debunked it. Fukushima will now be compared to Chernobyl. 4 nuclear reactors simultaneously spinning out of control. Chernobyl was a 200-ton reactor. It was mostly graphite, which is not like uranium and plutonium. It's a moderator. And Japan's was 800 tons reactors, pure uranium, pure plutonium. Some media had compared it. There were 100 times the size. It's actually significantly worse than that. If that's all it was, it'd still be a nightmare. One of the reactors in Japan was known as a mixed oxide fuel reactor, MOX, MOX fuel. This is where they reclaimed hot particles from missiles and silos and burned it in a reactor rather than storing it for 1 billion years. It's illegal in the United States and Canada, but the lunatics in France and at La Hague and Sellafield in the United Kingdom are constantly... Sellafield, United Kingdom, had a nuclear meltdown in the 50s. 8 million liters of radioactive MOX meltdown in the 50s there. That MOX water is running out at the rate of 8,000 liters a day, even today. The whole industry is lunatic. And then they build their reactors right alongside of farmland. And so the poll tonight, by the way, I'm Dana Durnford, and also known as the Nuclear Proctologist.org. You could have called in at 709-589-4406 if you're watching this later. Top Hong Kong newspaper. They kind of give you global response urgently needed. So we got a poll tonight. Is putting nuclear power plants in areas surrounded by farms evil? We got 16 votes. 100% says yes, it is evil. And the reason that it's evil is, I'll show you right quick, of course. So, the majority of nuclear power plants were built in farm countries. Can you wrap your mind around that? They're always hemorrhaging radiation, and once they start storing cores on the site, they're always splitting the atom. All that's vented into the environment. The fuel pools have no containments at any reactors on the entire planet. They have to vent off. If you let the radioactivity displace all the oxygen in the building, which is what it'll do, then when you introduce oxygen, it'll detonate. Very volatile. So this is a United Kingdom plant, for instance, surrounded by farms. And you'll see this picture a lot of times in the media where they show you these beautiful fields, beautiful, lethal, deadly radioactive fields ready to poison you and your loved ones worldwide. Because all nuclear power plants are hemorrhaging radiation all the time. But the amazing thing is that they have these fuel pools with decades of reactor cores, all of it still splitting the atoms. We're talking trillions each day of fission isotopes. And so when I say splitting the atom, it's hard to wrap your mind around, but that's what nuclear does. It creates, it's a perpetual machine. It keeps creating all these isotopes. It's endless supply of, literally the goose that laid the golden egg, so to speak, except it's not golden because all species on the planet are very vulnerable to it. Everything that replicates cells is very vulnerable. Incredibly vulnerable. They have no autoimmune trigger to defend against it. And so your body is under siege for the rest of your life. So should it be a crime to grow food alongside nuclear power plants? Because all the food is radioactive. They do it on purpose so the radiation doesn't bioaccumulate. And somebody had asked in the comments section last night, does radiation bioaccumulate over years? And that's a great question because it does. Absolutely does. And this industry, like they were calling to barcode everybody at birth, and that climate change skepticism is a sickness, that humans are a plague. Call for us to be executed if we don't go along with their narratives. They call to burn down your homes if you won't go along with their narratives. They cause for killing the majority of the planet if you don't go along with their narrative, their fabled narratives. It's kind of hard, isn't it? Well, where did global warming come from? From United Nations? No, it came from this professor. And United Nations stole that and ran with it. Where did, my God, net zero come from? It came from Professor Allen. Where did the carbon footprint come? And how are they going to get rid of the carbon footprint? Gee, I don't know. The idea of a personal carbon footprint was popularized by a large advertising campaign from BP Oil after a major accident. And what they done was they blamed you instead of them for the accident. But it was a large advertising campaign that stuck around, never went away. And the United Nations was like, yep, well, I'm liking this. We got global warming, net zero, and we got carbon footprint. We could use some climate change. Along came James Hansen. James Hansen statement was pivotal. The turning point in the history of the global climate change and marked the beginning of the global climate change policy debate was James Hansen. So you had the father of global warming, who you probably have never heard tell of. You had the father of net zero, most people probably never heard tell of. You had the father of carbon footprint, BP oil, most people probably never heard tell of. And you got James Hansen, the father of, you guessed it, climate change. And was the starting point of charging you for climate change. They're crazies. And if you don't go along with it, they'll blow you up.
Right, kids, just before you go, there's a brilliant idea in the air that I'd like to run by you.
Children.
Now, it's called 10-10. The idea is everyone starts cutting their carbon emissions by 10%.
Or we'll kill you.
Keeping the planet safe for everyone, eventually. Now, this hasn't got to be a huge thing, but I would love it if you and your families would think about doing something.
What sort of thing, miss?
Well, like getting your dad to insulate the loft, or taking your next holiday by train instead of flying,
these are great stuff.
Buying energy-saving light bulbs.
We're thinking of using our car less. I'm going to cycle to school.
That's fantastic, Jemima. Now, no pressure at all, but it'd be great to get a sense of how many of you might do this. Just a rough percentage. That's fantastic. And those not? Philip and Tracy. That's fine, that's absolutely fine. Your own choice. Okay, class, thank you so much for today, and I will see you all tomorrow. Oh, just before you go, I just need to press this little button here. Now, everybody, please remember to read chapters 5 and 6 on volcanoes and glaciation. Except for Philip and Tracy, of course. Right, kids, just before you go, there's a brilliant...
That's demonic. There was advertisement on TV that if you don't go along with this global warming, United Nations, right? There's 4 United Nations routines they've been using to bludgeon the planet with now since 2015 in particular. All 4 of them have been used to bludgeon every species on this planet. Global response urgently needed. Situation could prove catastrophic for the world. Fukushima is a global threat. Like just that one headline, your trigger, your normal response would be like, hey, there's something serious going on. Did you hear it? Hong Kong came out and said Fukushima is a global threat. Right? As soon as you read that headline, that should be your like, whoa, well, let's get on top of this. What's going on here? Instead, everybody's like, iPhone, iPad, video game. Oh, I gotta go play some video games. We'll check into it later. Global response urgently needed. Have you heard that in response to a coal plant breaking down? Honey, there's a coal plant broke down in China. It's going to kill everything on the planet. No, you never heard that. Honey, Fukushima's melting down. I'm worried the radiation is going to get some of that iodate. This is a plutonium dispersal map. Have you ever seen something like that? A plutonium dispersal radioactive fallout map. Sing it with me. Radioactive fallout. Yum, yum. So, just bad news. That's bad as it gets right there. That's bad, man. That's TEPCO's numbers, by the way. And it doesn't travel by itself. No, that's right. You would get a lollipop for getting that right. The slower you spread radiation, the more effectively it produces cancers and 1800 illnesses. Japan is going the very best way in the world for destroying the human race. That's kind of discouraging. Now let's get revenge anyway. If we can't save the planet, at least let's get our revenge. Let's call them out and shame them. Make sure they don't do it to the cockroaches in the future. This is a disaster of all humanity, the entire world. And it's on an international level. And it's bigger than anything. So, like, all these connotations of urgency and the world's out there. Yeah, it doesn't affect me. I never did like those birds shitting on my car anyway. Nuclear report warns of apocalyptic scenario at Fukushima. Have you ever heard the word apocalyptic used for coal plant breaking down? Or oil plant breaking down? Or gas plant? Usually it got something to do with a great big meteorite coming at the planet, right? That's what apocalypse has connotation. This could one day be considered the start of the ultimate catastrophe of the world and the planet. That showed up on your mainstream TV. Everybody would still be like, it's probably from Fox or something. This is Neptunium-238 hot particles. Decays into plutonium-239, by the way, but it's covering your planet. That doesn't worry you. Coal plants don't do that, by the way. Oil plants don't do that. Gas plants don't do that. They found plutonium in every sample. I suppose you did. When you look at the actual dispersal, you'll find plutonium in every sample worldwide too, if you look for it. My Geiger counter up there can't find plutonium, or americium, or neptunium, or the curium, which is the biggest byproduct of the radiative fuel rods. They need lead shielding 20 times thicker for the curium isotopes, by the way, than they do for the plutonium isotopes. They found plutonium in every sample. It's everywhere. It's one of my favorite headlines. Deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world. I'll never get sick of that one, baby. Because that tells the story. It's not that's going to blow up the whole world. It's the radioactive fallout. Coal plants don't do that. Oil plants don't do that. Gas plants don't do that. Solar plants don't do that. Wind plants don't do that. The only thing that does that is nuclear power. So you can see why they've been trying to brainwash you with Spider-Man and the Hulk so hard for 75 years. When a nuclear engineer says, I agree Fukushima can be an extinction event, you probably should pay attention. A good time to pay attention right around there. Experts agree many species of wildlife are endangered globally due to the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns. This is such a pretty little model. The model only lasts a couple of weeks and then it stops. The plume is just starting. It's continuously coming out. See it? It's continuously coming out. And then the model stops. It doesn't stop coming out, though. The model stops, but it doesn't stop, see? So when a liter of water, 4 glasses of water, of rainwater falling in your rivers and your lakes and your estuaries and your streams and your communities, your watersheds, falls down into your drinking water, for instance, per liter. So your pond immediately now, within 30 minutes, is saturated. What would normally be considered saturation, so this is going to last for weeks of radioactive fallout non-stop, because the plume is big. Big plume. So a better way to look at the plume is it starts getting big right away. This is by the 31st of March 2011. This is it happened on the 11th, right? This is 20 days later. Do anybody really think that you escaped that? Does anybody really think that the model stops the 31st? So by with a week later, this is all completely buried. It doesn't stop coming out. It's a continuous plume. Gas doesn't do that, by the way. Oil plants don't do that. Coal plants don't do shit like that. Human civilization may destroy itself. I mean, look at Fukushima. Fukushima can destroy itself, is what he's saying. Nobel Prize winner, the only way to preserve the human life is to completely turn away from nuclear power. Therefore, the only way to preserve the 8 million species on this planet is to completely turn away from nuclear power. You can't destroy humans without destroying all the other species. Basically first. If that was a story from last year about social media, and they say nuclear power has the risk of destroying the planet. That's a win for Dana right there, if I ever seen one. Major U.S. papers, time to quit kooky nookie power altogether. It threatens the very existence of human civilization. That's a warning. You're being warned right there, huh? And if that headline was to run again today on the media. Once a nuclear action occurs, everything is over. Zero prospects of restoring fishing grounds. And it's only a scattered one you'll hear actually say something like that. I originally had advocated going out and collecting the species that before they got wiped out. And I had a lady call me up, was on a ship, and that's what they were doing. They were collecting species in the Pacific and had been at it for quite a while as soon as Fukushima happened. So see, a lot of people worldwide understood what was happening, and they decided to cover it up, as you'll see. Nuclear power generation is the only invention that may destroy the future of the human species. And Ambassador Murata writes to the UN General Secretary, there's no exaggeration to say the fate of Japan and the whole world depends on the number 4 reactor, which they faked. And if you go back through my videos, I show that documentation regularly, where I'll show you all the reactors and blah, 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 blah. 1,000 years from now, contaminated water from Fukushima may be still entering the Pacific Ocean. Well, it doesn't really matter in one sense, because the ocean was covered in radioactive fallout right away, but there was so much went into it from land, because a lot of the fuel rods sank in the ocean because of detonation, and they're still splitting the atom. A lot of them got carried out on tsunami debris, lots of fuel pellets and stuff like that, and then washed off far offshore. It was just, they had cemented actual harbor because it had such radiation numbers. That meant fuel assemblies had landed down there also, right? It's absurd. The whole story is absurd. But we better have a conversation. The only way to have a conversation is get everybody on the right page, the honest page, the proper page with the right documentation. Right? So when you look at a few of my videos, all of a sudden you're able to make pretty accurate assessments from there on out on your own. I would hope, because you're not listening. It's not me. I'm showing you the documentation. Right? I'm bringing you this format of documentation. And I can bring you, with the equipment I got, I can bring you almost any format. A scatter one, because my system won't recognize it maybe, but 99% of the formats my system will handle without seizing up or something. We may not be able to live in Japan someday. So if your coal plant breaks down, we may not be able to live in Canada someday. Does that make any sense to anybody? Because this could easily be Canada. We may not be able to live in the United States someday because you had multiple reactors melting down at the one time. See? When you look at the numbers, and I do this randomly. I'll show you the numbers right across Japan. The whole show on just the documented numbers of radioactive fallout, and the numbers are just absurd. They're the definition of absurdness. The first year across the entire country was 865,000 extra cancers. And cancer is usually very latent, 10, 20 years before it manifests or is diagnosed. So when you see 6 in 10 Fukushima children tested have diabetes, this is game time. You got a ton. This is if you've seen 6 in 10 Fukushima children turn into zombies, you'd get your act together, wouldn't you? You'd be like, yeah, that was 6 kids turned into zombies out of every 10. People are like, what? Really? Where? 6 out of 10 children tested have diabetes. Everybody's like, what? You want me to go scrub the toilet? Head of Tokyo Area Medical Clinic, by the way, says, the head of the Tokyo, 36 million people, Tokyo Area Medical Clinic, we are expecting diabetes in children from Fukushima radiation. Cancer comes later. They're going to get cancer too. It's not you're going to get, diabetes or heart attack or cancer. No. You're going to get it all, man. It's just your immune system's compromised. You're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses and illnesses that were normally benign and harmless and innocuous. Comparisons with X-rays and CT scans are meaningless. Inhaling the particles, sequestering in your muscles, your organs, and your bones, your body attacks it immediately, constantly, for the rest of your life with white blood cells. That displaces your red blood cells permanently that are carrying nutrition and oxygen throughout your body, or insects, or birds, or mammals, or animals. And so getting radiation in your body attacks it. It's under siege, and that leaves your immune system as compromised. And if you're bioaccumulating it over time, and the whole population is, then you start to see numbers like this. So the pre-Fukushima numbers were 1 to 2 per million children had thyroid tumors. Now it's 13,646, not out of a million, but out of 40,000. Basically from 1 to 2 per million to 360,000 per million in just 1 year. We also see congenital heart disease abnormalities. This is where children, 14.2%, which is 14,200 children extra per 100,000 across the entire country, neonates and infants, need open heart surgery. This is absurd numbers. It's absurd. And then you see stuff like this. Is the public possibly worldwide? As the public, possibly worldwide, sickens over time. Wait, what? Now, if I say as the public possibly worldwide turns into zombies, everybody's like, what? Where? I need information. This is scary. Is Spider-Man going to help you out? Everybody put their Hulk uniform on. You'll be okay. Pregnant women get free homes in the nuclear wasteland, by the way. Kind of demonic creature. Thought that one up, I wonder. As the public possibly worldwide sickens over time. Now, if you've got a coal plant breakdown You think you're going to hear someone make that statement? Oh, Jesus, man. What is it? Coal plant broke down. What? Yeah, going to kill the planet, I think. Your oil. What's wrong? Well, the oil plant broke down. So what? It's probably going to take out the planet, man. It's an oil plant, for goodness sakes. So which one would you rather have? Oil, gas, or coal for a neighbor, or this creature? I don't know about you. Woo! Fukushima is the most serious man-made disaster in human history. Yeah, tell that to the whales that are emaciated, and every species of them. Obesity rate now nearly doubled. Excessive weight gain in a very short period of time after a nuclear crisis is a marker of radiation brain damage. So you might know people 50, 60 years never gained an ounce, and all of a sudden in a 1 year period they went boom. That's radiation poisoning. Pneumonia cases surged in Japan's regions. Frequencies of pneumonia also increased after Chernobyl. Chernobyl closed 9,000 farms in Ireland and Scotland, United Kingdom. There's still 400 closed today. 3,000 miles away. That's crazy stuff, man. Coal plants don't do that. Unprecedented spike of 1,500 atoms of radioactive sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs per cubic meter detected in the California air. How long can you hold your breath? They're estimated that the males were sequestering about 360 every day atoms into their testicles. That's going to be true for animals and birds and mammals and insects, right? Sterilize the shit out of the majority of them, amongst other things, right? But then you start seeing the insects disappearing because they got pounded. There's the study, a separate study, showing 360 atoms of the radioactive sulfur peroxide. These are nasty, incredible nasty isotopes. They're like spherical buckyballs where they ingest plutonium or uranium or americium, and they're very mobile. They just float around pulsing energy at the speed of light, like a little nuclear engine in each atom, right? Nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan. Nuclear fallout will engulf Canada. You won't hear that one. Nuclear fallout is about to engulf the United States. You're not going to hear that one in the media. But Taiwan was like, no, man, the kids are out there. I can't do it. We got to warn them. Radioactive rain caused 130 schools in Korea to close. Radioactive rain causes 130 schools. Hollywood couldn't come up with that one on their own pre-Fukushima, buddy. Hot radioactive particles in Seattle, 50% of the levels seen in Tokyo. Hot radioactive particles in Seattle. Seattle actually done air surveys from 1,000 feet and decided to hold on to the results for national security. In other words, the nuclear industry would have got punched out the next morning if they had told the truth. Radiation data from Seattle area survey may be withheld by the feds for national security purposes. Well, they actually did, right? We never did get the numbers from that. But we did get the numbers from California, where the New York Times contributors confirmed California rainwater was 181 times above drinking water standards, which there is no standard. The standard is there for a nuclear catastrophe, a nuclear war or something, where there's no safe water anywhere. Then there's a limit of this. If that's this much and that is this much and this is only that much, well, you can drink a little bit of that because otherwise you're going to die, right? And this will kill you later. So your body takes that, the radioactive iodines, and tries to convert them into hormones with your thyroid glands and distribute that out through your body. Numbers are just shocking, eh? Pennsylvania got pounded. San Francisco pounded. Government says 1,500 tons of highly radioactive sludge may end up as soil for gardening. So this story here, radioactive sludge, what they're actually talking about is there's 50,000 tons of sludge at the water reclamation facility where they filter water for your drinking. The sediment left over is so radioactive they couldn't get rid of it. They wanted TEPCO to pay for it. And it was around 90,000 becquerels, atomic decays, pulses, energies. So my Geiger counter up there should be saying, and the light went out over there. I'll fix that in a second maybe. Was 90,000 becquerels for the sediment at just a single water filtration facility, and they had 50,000 one-ton bags of radioactive sludge from their water filtration, which meant the filters were incredibly radioactive, which means your pipes in the community are radioactive going into your homes. Eerie fog of silence around Fukushima. The first surprising thing, New York Times, is there is no sound in a no-go zone. Yeah, you should come on the expeditions with me. All the way to Alaska, year after year, 4 to 5 months at a time, doing species count, and there was none to count. The first time I took several thousand bags with me to get samples, and we had set up to get dry ice and blah, 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 blah. And we get out there, all the species are actually gone. All of them. The elephant in the room is Fukushima radiation when it comes to the Pacific Ocean. The government has totally failed to inform the public about the full extent of the fallout, and I just showed you all of that. Animals are starving as the food chain continues to collapse. The event plagued the entire west coast, from Mexico to Alaska. And we've done expeditions up and down the coastline where there's 27,000 islands without coming home for 4 to 5 months each year on a sailboat or the big speedboats. And the species are all gone. It haunts me every night. 50 becquerels a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions in the vital organs. Because people forget that, there's so much work goes into a lot of the shows, obviously. And I'm at this for so long, this is what I live, eat, and breathe now. There's nothing you can do about it. That's just the way it has to be that way. It's not that you're consumed by it, it's just that there's so much coming at you all the time. Like, just keeping up with the news cycle every day is a daunting task, and it's all propaganda. Every single story is jacked on steroids with propaganda. It's stunning, really. And this is what we've done for many years to keep the fire lit on this topic, was cover pertinent news and also current nuclear events, because there's much nuclear around the planet and much of it is leaking. Well, it's a despicable, coward industry and with evil intentions that are exterminating us and our species, and we are the stewards. And when should we start acting that way? Because I've been at this a long time, but when will society catch up is the question. And so all I can do is do the best I can, do the research, have these conversations or these presentations to those that are drifting out there looking for the documentation. And if they raft up here for a short period, they will sail away with an incredible look on reality instead of living in this perpetual fantasy everybody is lulled into. 50 becquerels a kilogram in humans lead to, this is human, not just children now, which are much more susceptible. You imagine how susceptible animals are. A lot of animals will eat mushrooms, and mushrooms are one of the big bioaccumulators of radiation. 50 becquerels a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions. Like, my goodness, organ failure coming in the near future. This is guaranteed catastrophe in a short period, a few years. So children with 11 becquerels a kilogram, and the limit for food they claim coming out of Japan is 100 becquerels a kilogram. They're saying cesium-137, but they're not. Look, that's gamma, like my Geiger counter, right? Which is don't have a light on it now. I'll see if I can resolve that in a second here. Yeah, just give me a second. I like seeing it there, but it looks like the light's gone out. I actually had it on too high. So maybe that's what happened. Let's keep going here. 11 becquerels a kilogram start to see a heart problem for children. Japan is shipping just cesium, not counting beta or alpha or neutrons. And irreversible heart damage for children with 50 becquerels a kilogram. These are legitimate studies that are scary, scary bad news. Because when you think about how much is floating around because of this ongoing nuclear meltdowns, we got to come up with solutions. And we got to have a conversation. We got to force this out into the public at some point. Cesium-137 immediately damages the heart muscles. So heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. So if you start doing studies within 50 miles radius of a nuclear power plant, you see this major spike in Alzheimer's and dementia and autism and diabetes and Down syndrome and schizophrenia and 1,800 illnesses and diseases death rates might give the creeps to some people. Extreme increased mortality caused by heart attacks and cardiac diseases. In just a single community, in a single month, there was an extra 12,700 people dropped from heart attacks. In a single month, an abnormality spike. So that has to be true for many surrounding communities. It can't be just one community. And TEPCO Mitchell will run out of the destitute and the homeless and the victims of society in 5 years unless a way is found to reduce the radiation exposure. Well, they're not trying. They're giving them paper suits, and they're burning the suits and liberating radiation back into the environment at the end of each day. TEPCO unsure how to access areas radiation levels around it are 10 sieverts per hour. That's lethal doses for the homeless. And when the homeless drops, the rest of the homeless starts getting nervous. See? The ambulances are usually here 10 times a day for quite a long time. Because people are dropping. Send us people that don't mind dying. Now, if your coal plant breaks down, you expect to hear that one? How about if your oil plant breaks down? Do you think you're going to see a headline like that? Send us people that don't mind dying. And that's what TEPCO is still doing today. Stealing the victims of society and slaughtering them. Water above 1 sievert per hour. TEPCO done nothing to stop the leaks. Leaks. When I heard the word leaks, because I look at the pictures of the buildings and the properties, and I hear the word leaks, you just want to stick a fuel rod up in their nose. High as shit, 512 sieverts. 5 sieverts is a lethal dose, by the way. 512 is like, bye, goodbye, cruel world. You're dead 3 seconds later. Radiation levels of several dozens of sieverts possible near the number 2 reactor. These are to get the homeless come in each day in batches, right? On a bus full of homeless, and they'll say one like, you go over there and stand up for a few minutes. They drop to like, okay, we're going to put a yellow line here. We don't want people going down that road. Radiation levels of 7 dozens of sieverts. 266 sieverts an hour at the number 1 dry well meter. Well, first off, there is no meter at the number 1 dry well. That building is completely destroyed. Outside the building was huge numbers. Monitor detected 100,000 sieverts. Just put that in perspective. You're like a mile away and you got to stop and type a shoe for a second. You never stand up again. You're dropped dead. High radiation doses in an area measured to over 10 sieverts an hour. 10 sieverts an hour is a lethal dose. Your organs start to melt right away. You're done. Right? They'll keep melting, and over the next couple of days, even if you run away right then, over the next couple of days, you finish melting. That's the end of you. That's a death sentence. Foot-long pieces of cement that weighs a sievert an hour. But they're only talking about gamma. They're not or beta. They're not talking about gamma, alpha, and neutrons also. They're very, very deceptive. The industry is very well disciplined in telling the lie, never telling you truth. No kernels of truth, preferably, either. If you got to say something different, then go back to the 1950 propaganda and drag that in there. TEPCO done nothing for over 2 years to stop the highly radioactive Fukushima leak. Every time you hear this word leak, like a leak is not something you put a bucket underneath it, right? These reactors need 4,500 tons of cooling water each per minute. So it needed 16,000 pickup trucks of water every minute for 4 reactors. 16,000 pickup, 1 ton pickup, not the normal pickup, but a 1 ton, big pickup. Every minute, 1,440 minutes a day. So it doesn't run away. If it runs away, it's going to need a lot more water. Guess what? These were all gone China syndrome, aka ran away. 2 sieverts of beta radiation emitted from a single liter of leaked water. Liter. If you had a gallon here, when I started the show, it would have been dead quite a while ago. Because it's going to be saturated with neutrons, saturated with alpha, saturated with gamma, not just beta. It's an insult just to measure just a single emitter. 3.6 sieverts an hour detected to rainwater pipe. So there's no way you can do work on that site with these numbers all around the site. The reactors blew up, you ain't fixing jack shit at that stage. There's fuel rods tossed for miles in every direction. You ain't doing jack, which meant everything melted down and disappeared, including 10 million pounds in the common spent fuel pools. Severe labor shortages. They're not talking about nuclear academics or nuclear scientists or nuclear students. They're talking about the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society. There's no nuclear power plant program to send our workers to Fukushima and help them out. That ain't gonna happen. Deadly Easter eggs generating radiation higher than 10 sieverts an hour. Deadly Easter eggs. ABC. They're such a hateful group of media, isn't they? Fukushima workers on camera. The holes and the cracks in the ground are terrified. Webcam shows the China syndrome clouds of radioactive steam rising from the cracked earth from the detonations of 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures hitting water tables. Water, like a liter of water, expands 1,400 cubic or square feet in a millisecond. Imagine like a small lake getting hit by 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. So it splits the earth. The water now in contact with the curium is curiated water. Not tritiated, but curiated water. Curium water. This is lethal. Killed all the animals in all the experiments. coming out of the ground looking like steam because the conditions are perfect. So you have you have convection going on, and it shows up as steam. Now, if you walk in that steam for 3 seconds, that's the end of you. You never take another step. You land on your knee, then your face, and you're dead. And they've abandoned now. Everything that touches becomes extremely radioactive forever. So this is why nuclear scientists don't go to Fukushima. Because what they keep doing whenever these events happen is they'll bring in the homeless and remote control equipment. They'll put down steel sheets, then they'll pave over that, then they'll cement over that, then they'll pave over that again. Then they'll go find more homeless and start killing them off. TEPCO confirms the steam coming up underground China syndrome was 4.7 sieverts per hour, 20% more than June in October. These are absurd numbers. It's steam. It's like if you suck in that for a few seconds, that's a death sentence right there in the spot. There ain't no Hollywood horror movie. Now there were 6 places there where over 10 sieverts per hour constantly, where the whole site would disappear in this envelope of steam, lethal doses. So now it's not 10 sieverts, right? It's thousands of sieverts because it's all together. Fatal radiation levels exceeding 10 sieverts per hour measuring devices are maxed out. These are stationary devices. Up to 1 million sieverts. So if 10 sieverts is a fatal radiation dose, what's 1 million? I want to suck my thumb in the corner with the lights off for a while. Workers confirmed TEPCO's taking weekends off at Fukushima. First off, TEPCO's not there. The homeless and the destitute and the victims of society, the immigrants that don't speak the language, and the mob, the accusers that is running them, are there. It's absurd. It's time to make an old geezer suicide squad, the ultimate contempt, yeah? Sorry about that. Weekends off at Fukushima, not one plant worker could be seen. Only steam. Everybody ran away. There were 16,000 quit in just a short period of time there. Fukushima Vice Governor, all of Japan must face it. A Fukushima draft. So if your coal plant breaks down, do you got to have a war draft across your country? Huh? This is still ongoing. We're going to have to deal with this. We're going to have to grow up and deal with it. Grow up and put on our radioactive protection gear. We can all wear Spider-Man costumes and the Hulk costumes and go there, but that's not going to actually work. The Hulk and Spider-Man were created to indoctrinate your friends and your families and your loved ones. Radioactive material from the reactors is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poisons. Okay, so let's do it backwards. You know what an industrial poison is? Well, the nuclear from the reactors is 2 billion, with a B, times more toxic than industrial poison. How about I'll give you the hottest chili pepper or chili whatever on the planet. The hottest peppers, rather, on the planet. And you're not paying attention, I go and rub that on your lips and I run away and you're, it hurts. And then you find something that's 2 billion times more toxic than what I've done to you. And you're like, I'm going to get them back with this. Do you get it yet? So imagine an invisible plume of it covering the entire planet. So what I look at, I say, well, how much is that going to affect the microscopic world? How much is it going to affect the insects? How is that going to affect the birds? How is this also going to affect the birds? And how is this going to affect all the fungus and all the species that live on them? And where does it stop, right? If nobody's trying to have a conversation, you can't come up with solutions until you understand what the facts are. Right? That's the only way you're going to come up with any solutions. You got to know what all the facts are. Otherwise, if you don't know this and you don't know blah, and how are you going to come up with the facts, right? So my theory was I would gather up the facts and put it all together. Plus, get out and do the research because nobody wanted to do it. Can't blame. It's pretty dangerous. And survived multiple trips to Alaska on the open ocean year after year, which when you look back on is just amazing, really. So the radiation coming out of the reactors is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. Oh, and it pulses energy at the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, every second for billions of years, heating up the planet, pure energy. And it's incredibly toxic. So nuclear industries are like, those nuclear scientists should be prepared to die at the Fukushima plant. No. They're like, those 60 and older should be prepared to die sacrificed at the Fukushima plant. Imagine how insidious, how much incredible contempt you got to have for humanity to do that. 2 more spots there at 10 sieverts an hour, lethal doses. Now over 200 sieverts per hour, Unit 1. Radiation levels double within 20 days of decontamination out throughout the prefectures. Showed you earlier it's half of Japan, 14 prefectures. Officials admit decontamination only reducing external exposures. This is absurd. So the criteria is based on external doses, not internal. Which is important when it's 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. That starts becoming quite important. Gunnarsson says, move south of the equator if the Unit 4 fuel pool goes dry. So the Unit 4 fuel pool. The fuel pools, was Unit 4, 190 foot billion by 150 foot wide. These 2 pools at the top of them were stuffed because they don't have any repository in Japan or anywhere else. So the fuel pools are stuffed because there are decades and decades of reactor cores. And so when Arnie Gunnarsson said move south of the equator and the Unit 4 fuel pool goes dry, I put him up where the fuel pools are and there's what's left of the building.
The division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima.
And so if he built the racks for the fuel pools and he don't know that they're gone, who does? And then he was put on a pedestal. Even the anti-nuclear movement was shoving them out in everybody's face. Now that's reactor 4 over there. She's going to pretend that it's actually everything is normal and there is no damage and they're getting the fuel out of a pool that don't even exist.
We are here inside reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leading to the country's worst nuclear disaster.
And so to your left is reactor 4. That's what it actually looks like. They're pretending they're in a building that don't exist. And Gunnarsson's saying move south of the equator when it's already gone. And then we had plume models showing disposition over the northern hemisphere. This is a study of 20 million particles of fallout per liter. These are incredible numbers because it's going to be saturated with all the other isotopes that are out there for thousands and millions of years. 220 million atoms. that's absurd. It's absurd. This study was done out of Ottawa, the capital of Canada, by the way, at a major university there originally, before they went closed. So right after this showed up, the current prime minister at that time in Canada banned all scientists in Canada for several years after from doing interviews without the office's talking points, and they were only allowed to talk in an interview with whatever talking points were faxed or sent to them before they can do an interview. Stephen Harper, right? Because they didn't need another couple of headlines like that showing up. The gig was up for the nuclear industry. They immediately then appropriated $12 billion for Darlington to rebuild those reactors. $12 billion, because the population didn't know what was going on yet, and then appropriated $12 billion more for Pickering, Ontario nuclear power plants in Canada, because the population still hadn't figured out what was happening. So they stole $24 billion for the nuclear power plants just in case the population woke up. The power plants would stay going and poison the entire country. Radioactive xenon at 130, or radioactive xenon 133 in Washington was 450 times above detection levels. 450,000. So imagine my Geiger counter screaming at 325. If it was saying 450,000, I would have got up and ran. I don't know where I'm running, but I am definitely running. These are absurd numbers. So your whole country sustained, persisted for weeks. And so you expect to see all the species start to die off in increments over the next decade or so. And that's what we're seeing now. And you expect to see the planet heating up. Fukushima radiation is still circling the globe, and the levels are consistently rise and fall in a 40-day cycle. Gunnison, move south of the equator if Unit 4 goes. Unit 4 was gone. A lot of people in the industry, I mean, it wasn't just a reporter for CNN. It had to be the editor, it had to be the makeup artist, it had to be the videographers. All of them had to participate in that deception. The producers at actual CNN, there's a lot of people had to participate for that video to make it into TV. And all the media done the same thing at the same time, faked being in a building that didn't exist because it's harmless. No, they done it because it's an extinction level event, and they don't want to come up with solutions. It's a death cult. It's a secret society. Is putting nuclear power plants in farmlands evil? We got 34 votes, 100%. 100% of people says it's evil, baby. It's so strange, isn't it? That there's no one to hold them accountable. How can you not, like next year at the Constipated Party 26, Conference of Parties 26, United Nations, we need 500 of these signs for the protesters. That'll light a fire under this planet. I can tell you what. Show up out of the blue with 500 of those, start passing them out for free, big signs. I'd do it. Pilgrim nuclear plant may release 1 million gallons of radioactive water into the bay, what we know. Now they're also talking about evaporating it into... it's just the gallows laugh, right? It's It's hard to believe they would actually do something that evil, like evaporate it. But make no mistake about it, they don't want to store it under any circumstances. We're dumping it. We're going to dilute it, dump it, or we're going to evacuate or evaporate it. So when 3 Mile Island happened, 3 Mile Island, preparing Wednesday to begin testing equipment used to boil off 2.3 million gallons of water contaminated in the nation's worst commercial nuclear accident, which was actually Santa Susana, right? 460 times worse. Small amounts of one radioactive element, tritium. So they're trying to convince you that only tritium is in the water in 1979, 80, after. That's absurd. It just shows you, because there's no one to challenge them, see? There's no one, especially back then, there was no platform, like no internet. And if you did get into the media, it didn't mean it was going to be syndicated. The release's effect on the average person living within 50 miles, 2 million people, of 3 Mile Island will be less than the amount of radiation received from a year watching color television. You're like, nah, Dana, stop photoshopping this shit, Dana. No, this is what they actually said. Less than the amount of radiation received from a year watching color television. In fact, 3 Mile Island radioactive releases were hundreds or thousands of times higher than what the government admitted. And the pets had died all over the place after reanalysts from top universities. And there was reports of enormous increases of cancers, infant mortality rates, and birds disappeared, mutations observed. But according to the official narrative from the kooky death cult and secret society of cowards, less than the amount of radiation received from a year watching color television. You can't conflate television, watching television, with a dirty bomb. And the media was happy to spread that propaganda way back then. And so you're up against a very well entrenched, a very complacent industry is what the media has become in universities. They've been taken over in increments over 75 years by the goblins from the nuke-tard industry. And this could be dealt with. All you got to do is you got to identify what the crime is and who the criminals are. Then it's easy to go after them. But until you have that a certain percentage of the population, once it gets to like 5% of the population wakes up, it storm rolls after that. So they can't control it no longer. And so it's very difficult to find the people that are, committed to the truth, to the actual truth, right? And are able to articulate it and have a platform. And so, like, I'm killing it. I'm crushing it. I got 24 people watching my show. I got over 500 subscribers. This is a new site. And the most I can hope for is 20 people on my shows during the live show, despite the fact of doing it for a decade. And providing, pertinent, very rare documentation information. An analyst is very suspect, to say the least. So they do a very good job at hiding people like me. If there is more of us out there, it's hard to find them. And then they feed you a lot of fluff, right? But it doesn't matter what we say, because the comment section is already up. The media didn't report on it until too late. So we can't even have a comment on it because those are closed now too. The whole story is crazy. If you read that story, it's just absurd. What, Stuart? What, are you crazy? Then we got to pay for it forever. We'll just dump it. That's what we have always done. My great pappy done it, and his pappy done it, and his great great grandpappy done it. Military industrial complex. The military idiot machine. They're idiots. They're not military industrial complex. They're lunatics. They're just a coward industry. Got yourself a cushy job and killing all the species, going home pretending they're normal. Go home, look at their wives and their kids like, hi folks, how's your day? Can daddy get you anything? They're lunatics. It's sedition what they're doing, right? It's always sedition. And so this was a short week. Pretty burnt out. There's a lot going on. Did raise an extra 120 last night from James Lucid, as you know, in the comments there sometimes. I'd like to know, I'd like for him to know how much we appreciate that, because we bought a lot of gear this week, a lot of expenses, and you can't do it. Unfortunately, what I'm doing without burning money, you got to burn money to keep the whole operation. And sometimes I just got to go ahead and do it, whether I got the money or not. And it's a dangerous thing for me to do. But that's 170 back out of almost 400 we spent yesterday. That takes a lot of pressure off me. Okay, so we'll see everybody. We'll see everybody on Sunday, I think. I'm going to be working all day tomorrow and all day the next day. I'll be out in the woods, but it looks at the forecast. So Monday at the latest, but Sunday hopefully. Dana Nasana, good night, Dana. James Lucid, again, James, thank you, my friend. You're awesome. Chet Austin, Ted Richards. Wow. We got Ben Cordell talking about thousands of dead shearwaters in Australia right after Fukushima. It's crazy. Heavy Thinker, good night everybody. James Oldhand. Hi James. Looks like we got censored pretty good tonight, eh? Holy cow. Darlene. Yeah, heavy censorship. And it's also Groundhog's Day or Thanksgiving's Day. Groundhog's Day. Provoke. Another person telling me they've been unsubscribed. Wow. I get 2 or 3 every day, people telling me they're unsubscribed. Minnie, Patriot Angel, I only served one king. Lori, I wasn't really expecting too many people tonight. Marjorie, Evans, Ella, good night everybody. I was kind of expecting everybody to catch the video later. Lexus, Celeste, hi Celeste, Mindy, thank you. Yeah, thanks Dana yourself. Good night, Chet, everybody. James Lucid, everybody, hopefully I didn't miss anybody. You guys have a nice night. Great day. Great weekend. Where, like everybody else, now we're getting pounded by heavy rains down on this part of the coast, on the east coast. The west coast turn was last week, still going on, I think, actually. A lot of washouts down here today. Wow, huge washouts. 12 inches of rain in just a short period of time. It's just madness, the amount of rain around me. Since early this morning, it's just like, wow, stuff. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody either Sunday night or Monday. Depends if I can get out in the woods all weekend. We'll see everybody Monday. I'll be burnt out on Sunday. Because when winter sets in, I won't be able to do it for a few months unless I get a Skidoo or something, right? They're expensive and dangerous if you're buying second-hand cheap ones. But it's all good. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thomas, everyone. We'll see everybody on Sunday or Monday. Have a great night and great weekend, folks. God bless.